Portal worries? What portal worries? The Tar Heels have their point guard. Welcome to Chapel Hill, Kyan Evans.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Woo, baby. Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, April 10th, 2025, by 3 minutes on the East Coast at least. Welcome into this live Locked On Tar Heels podcast edition, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch to get your Thursday going very early, the exact right way. I said it's 3 minutes after midnight on the East Coast. It's actually not. It's only 11:03. I'm just getting ahead of myself because I'm excited because Carolina has landed their point guard. It's great news. For those of you that typically watch this in real time on the morning, forgive me. Sometimes news breaks at night and we go live and that's the show. If you're listening back to this later, you don't know any different anyway. And so welcome in. Special shout out to all of you everydayers joining us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders. If you're not part of that, man, you need to come join now. The link for that's in the show notes. And of course, our Locked On Tar Heels Discord, which is just a couple shy of 500. It's great stuff. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Hey, coming up on the show today, of course, we got to talk about Kyan Evans, the Colorado State guard, transferring to North Carolina. This is great news for the Tar Heels, taking all of the worries of last offseason away, of all the hand-wringing of we just need somebody. Nah, that's done and gone. But Carolina might not be done for the weekend. They might be on Kanon Catchings watch as well. I think we're going to use up our entire time talking about those two guys. But I do have another segment, if we need it, talking about that college basketball valuation article you might have seen from the Wall Street Journal. If we don't get to that today on the Thursday show, I'll either talk about it with Coach Rob tomorrow on Friday or save it for next week. So just stay tuned for that. Okay, let's get right into Kyan Evans. Man, this is great news. Carolina has their point guard. Now, I discussed him more in depth on yesterday's show. So if you're wanting to go back and watch that, you need to go back to yesterday's show, the Wednesday show. It's the second segment. Or if you don't want to watch all that, I also clipped it out as its own separate video on YouTube. And so you can watch that there. That's where we went more in depth on pros and cons and everything he's bringing to the table. And then today we'll talk a little bit about that, but also really want to talk about what does this mean for North Carolina? Because that's why you're all here. It's like, okay, great. He's committed. Who is he? But what does it mean? Are we going to be good? Will we be on bubble watch all season long? I sure hope not. And I think Kyan Evans can be a big reason why. First off, before we get to Kyan Evans, what a relief this is. Can we just rewind to last offseason where it was miss after miss after miss? And I mean, that was going throughout the summer. Here we are. It's Thursday, April 10th, for those of you not watching live. And it's got our point guard, got a shooting guard that could play some wing, got our big man. And now, I mean, it's like, okay, there's more. Yes, probably that we need, but okay. We're in a much better spot. And I don't know about you, but I feel a great peace about that. There's always going to be like this guy and that guy, and why didn't we get him, and why we landed him? What, like, okay, fine. We'll talk more about that. But what that all leads me to say is, Jim Tanner, the new GM, what up to you, sir? You are doing a great job already right out of the gate, and Carolina is getting dudes. Kyan Evans is Carolina's third portal commit of this offseason. A couple weeks ago landed Jonathan Powell, the West Virginia transfer coming to Carolina, multiple years of eligibility for him. And then Henry Vasar last Friday, multiple years of eligibility there. And then now Kyan Evans, who also has multiple years of eligibility. I like, that is the kind of thing that I love. It's like, I just got finished watching the Braves game before I came in here. They're now 2-9 gross. Ugh. But when you get to the trade deadline, a lot of teams are trying to offload guys that just have 1 year. It's like they're going to be a free agent after this year anyway. But what you want to get is the dudes that you can control for multiple years. That's the kind of thing that I love about all three of these guys that Carolina has already gotten. That is great news, man, and I'm excited for that. All right, let me just give you a little, I said I went more in depth on Kyan Evans yesterday. I still want to give you a little bit of a bio blast so you can check into that. Anyway, Evans is 6'2", 175. So not, we're not talking Kobe White height, particularly with his hair, which mine looks like when I throw it out, but also bigger than RJ Davis, bigger than Elliot Cadeau. So we'll take that. Here's what everybody wants to know. Can he shoot the basketball? Does he play offense? Will he shoot? And the answer is a resounding yes. Kyan Evans last year at Colorado State, 44.6% from three on 4.4 attempts a game. I'm not saying he was like 4 of 10. No, this dude, high volume, high efficiency. That is what we're looking for, man. That's exactly what Carolina needs. Last season, he was 70 of 157 from beyond the arc. And like his freshman year, he didn't shoot as well from beyond the arc, but 32%, but he just wasn't taking as much. He didn't play as much. So I kind of just don't even look at that one because I don't think it is a good sample size or representative of who he actually is as a shooter. And by the way, of those 73 pointers he made this year at Colorado State, 17 of them were deeper than 25 feet. This dude has range. I love it, man. Absolutely. Now, there's always that thing of like, okay, there's guys that it's like, you're a great 3-point shooter, but why are you bad at the free throw line? No, sir. Kyan Evans, 85.2% from the free throw line this year for Colorado State. Not a ton of attempts, 2.3, but enough. 69 out of 81 in totality. Would love to see him get there more, but hey, it's a start, right? And the fact that it's 85.2%. When you lose an RJ Davis, that's what you need to replace it with, is a guy shooting that level. And if, by the way, Seth Trimble continues to shoot above 80% from the free throw line like he did this year, that's exactly what you need. Now, the assist numbers are not as elevated as Elliot Cadeau's. Elliot, while he was up around 6 assists a game, just 3.1 for Kyan last year at Colorado State to 1.9 turnovers. So not as good an assist to turnover ratio as I would like, and probably as you would like. So that's something I would like to see the assists grow, and I'd like to see the turnovers shrink. I'd like to see some separation there. 2.9 rebounds a game. I'd love to see that get to like 4 or something, but that's fine. Again, as I said, he does have 2 years of eligibility. He played 2 years at Colorado State, and so can be a multi-year Tar Heel. Something else about his shooting and scoring capability. This comes from Tar Heels of New York on Twitter, said that last season, only 5 Division I players met the following 5-point criteria: a greater than 20% assist rate, a greater than 50% percentage from 2-point shots, 40% or greater than 40% from 3, at least 50 made threes, and greater than 80% from the free throw line. Again, really quickly, greater than 20% on assist rate, greater than 50% from 2, greater than 40% from 3, greater than 80% from the free throw line, and at least 50 made threes. Kyan Evans, just one of 5 Division I basketball players to hit those marks last year. And he's a Tar Heel. Give me that all day long. I think Carolina guys are both the team, the coaches, and us who cover and cheer for the Tar Heels going to love this young man. What's cool for me is I live in Southwest Missouri, a town called Joplin. He's from just up the road in Kansas City, about 2 hours away from me, from a high school called Staley High School. Played for Mocan Elite in AAU, which most of the high-profile guys around where I live play for. Really, really good program, and that's awesome. And you recognize just in some of the things you see from him, like the dude that he is. Earlier on Wednesday, he had posted on social media a thank you to the Colorado State program, to his boys. And so I love that. But that's also, by the way, when I was like, oh, it's go time. This is happening. And then on Wednesday evening, posted a graphic to both Twitter and Instagram, and just the caption was "Let's do it." And obviously it was him in a Carolina uniform. So great stuff there. And this had been brewing throughout Wednesday. Multiple sources, including Trilly Donovan and Eric Bossi of 247, had basically said, hey, look, this is going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not if. And so here we sit, and he is a Tar Heel. Now, one of the immediate questions people ask, because I said I really want to get into what does this mean for Carolina of it? To me, this probably means that Carolina will be out on both Xavier Lee from Princeton and Trey Holloman from Michigan State. I think definitely on Xavier Lee because it would be an almost identical role, and I don't think he would want to come share that. And I don't know that they would go, they could be a 1-2. Coach Davis has talked about, I love playing with 2 lead guards. I don't see that happening, if we're being honest. Now, I had stated literally on yesterday's show, I prefer Xavier Lee to Kyan Evans slightly, but it was a timing issue because Xavier Lee is in the NBA draft experimental process to see hey, do I want to stay in or not? And the separation between when I'm talking, I prefer Lee, I'm saying marginally so. And the difference between the two of them is not worth, in my mind, in my opinion, is not worth the possibility of waiting for Xavier Lee to decide he wants to come back to school and the possibility of not getting him. I think it was a much better call, as the team has done here, to go ahead and lock up Kyan Evans, even if it means they might have gotten Lee, but you don't know. I think this is the wise play, man. You don't want to get stuck with no dance partner at the end of the day, right? And so that's really good. Now, on the Trey Holloman of it, he is scheduled for a visit this weekend. In fact, I was actually going to lead this show talking about Trey Holloman and discussing him and his potential fit at Carolina. But then as the Kyan Evans news moved forward on Wednesday, I was like, we're going to have to bump that. I would not be at all surprised if he cancels this visit. In fact, by the time you watch or listen to this later, if you're not doing it in real time, he might have already done so. At the same time, you just never know. Maybe he's willing to come in and be one of the dudes and not the dude, right? And I think that's where he's better suited. As I look at, for example, I hate to have to compare it to this, but to Duke's roster this year, one of the things that they did so well with their roster construction is they had all these high-level talented guys, and they surrounded them with veteran, experienced players who understood their role, like Mason Gillis from Purdue. Came in out of a national championship game, didn't start for Duke, but played a critical role. Sion James, there was no guarantee that he eventually started, but probably was not expecting to start. Malik Brown was critical for that team, but didn't come in as a starter. And so if Trey Holloman is into that, I think he would be a phenomenal backup point guard for North Carolina. So I would be very in for that. So I'm hopeful that he will still want to come, but Carolina's running out of some space. And in fact, that's the next part of the conversation we're going to have, is looking at my scholarship chart and seeing where things are at there. So that's what we'll get to. Plus, I want to talk about, there's always this concern when somebody transfers up from the mid-major level to the high major level, is it going to work? So we're going to have those conversations. And again, as I said, we'll pull up the scholarship chart, all that happening in just a second. Right after I tell you about our good friends at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy. So whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, whatever it is, I love it. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the games tip off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win even bigger. FanDuel actually already has their 2026 NCAA tournament champion odds out. This is frustrating, but Duke is the number one in those odds right now at plus 1,000. The next highest ACC team is Louisville at plus 1,400. The Tar Heels are sitting at like plus 5,000 right now, way off. But I tell you what, might be a dark horse. They keep landing dudes Let's make it happen. If you want to get in on that, check it out. Go on over to FanDuel.com and again, claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Check it all out at FanDuel.com. Okay, so one of the questions with bringing in somebody who has not been playing at the high major level, one of the questions you always ask is, can they transfer up and is it going to work? This is a great question to ask. The interesting thing is not all mid-major conferences are created equal. For example, let's compare it to Xavier Lee. The Ivy League is a much lower conference than the Mountain West Conference. And in fact, I'll pull up KenPom in real time here as we're talking to explain what I mean. KenPom, part of his algorithm, ranks each conference. And so this past year, it was SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Big East, ACC in order. That was your top 5. Literally right behind the ACC, 6th place amongst conferences is the Mountain West Conference. And the difference from the Mountain West to the ACC is much more minimal than the ACC up to the 4th place Big East. And so don't hear Mountain West and be like, oh man, I don't know if it's going to work. It's absolutely going to work. Colorado State was great. They were on fire down the stretch of last season. And so much of it was because of Kyan Evans. And of course, Neat Clifford too, who was his teammate that is going to be off to the NBA after this year. Contrast that with the Ivy League, who was the 14th ranked conference in Division I this past year. And that's still top half. There are 31 conferences until the Pac-12 is resurrected. There'll be 32. But the concern over, does Xavier Lee, what he does, translate up versus does what Kyan Evans does translate up? I'm not worried about Kyan at all. And I think this is going to work very, very well. Thank you very much. So I'm not concerned about it. I understand if others are, that's great and fine, but we'll see how his play on the court proves it. Now, the next question is, as you start to look at the scholarship chart, right now, Carolina has 12 guys on the roster. The seniors are Van Allen Lubin, Seth Trimble, and Cade Tyson. Remember, no more COVID eligibility. It was RJ's class that was the last to have that. Juniors, for a while, there were literally no juniors on the roster, but now there are 2, Kyan Evans and then Henry Vasar, the Arizona transfer, who is a redshirt junior. 4 sophomores, James Brown, Zayden High, who is a redshirt sophomore, Drake Powell, and Jonathan Powell. I'll say about Zayden High, I've had a lot of questions about him, like why do you continue to include him? I've been sharing behind the scenes with our Locked On Tar Heels insiders the information I'm receiving from sources. But right now, I have him on the scholarship chart, and that should tell you all you need to know for now. Obviously, things are fluid in the transfer portal, but there's my answer to everyone who's asking. You see Zayden High's name on the chart? There you go. And then the incoming freshmen, Isaiah Dennis, Derek Dixon, and Caleb Wilson. So right now that's 12 guys. And so we'll see if there's any other attrition out and if Carolina is bringing more in, which we'll talk about that more here in just a second. The big question now, though, is backups. Who will be the backup point guard to Kyan Evans? Because last year, for example, if Elliot's out of the game, you have RJ Davis able to run the point, who, frankly, at times, because of Elliot's inconsistency, was the better point guard option. There is no RJ Davis on this team. I don't know if you knew that. He's finally out of eligibility. I think right now, your next best option at point guard, if you're the Tar Heels, is Seth Trimble. That's part of why I think Trey Holloman is still potentially on the table, which, again, could change. Let me timestamp this again. It's 11:21 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday night right now, right? And so as we know right now, Trey Holloman is still slated to come to Carolina this weekend. We'll see what happens. With Seth Trimble, though, I've been consistent in saying, even back to his sophomore year, like Seth in spurts, I really like at the point guard position. I would not want him to be the full-time point guard. I love that we've made this move. And that is not a slight to Seth in any way. My thing with that is that I think Seth's game is best when he doesn't have to be running the point, because it lets him get out in the open court and go and fly, defend the way he needs to, and all of that. I think he's better suited when he's doing that, which is great. I also, by the way, I'll go ahead and say this. I think that because of Kyan Evans' shooting capability, I think that then points to a better capability, a better opportunity to have Seth at the 2. The big concern was, like, if Elliot Cadeau is still your point guard and Seth is your shooting guard, that's not enough 3-point shooting. But now with Kyan Evans, I think that opens the door where Seth could be your starting 2 guard. And in fact, it's probably more likely now than not. And we'll see if his 3-point shot is back. I had posted on Twitter, I think yesterday, maybe the day before, that prior to his injury last season, Seth was shooting 38.5% from beyond the arc. Now, there's pushback with that from people like, hey, Isaac, his shot's not considered, blah, blah, blah. Fine. I hear that, whatever. But it's a fact. And the year before, he had shot over 40%, low volume, but still. So we'll see. So beyond Seth, though, what do you do after Kyan Evans and after Seth Trimble? Neither Isaiah Dennis or Derek Dixon are point guards, the 2 incoming freshman guards. They are both either combo or shooting guards. I would classify them as that. That said, though, they are, from everything I've heard and read and talked with people about, they are both working on that capability. And so, like, there's kind of your in a pinch thing. But I think the vast majority of the time, you're leaning on Kyan Evans and you're leaning on Seth Trimble as things stand. We'll see. I said it earlier, but my goodness, as I look at this scholarship chart, as I think about the depth chart, what a relief it is to, as we sit here on April 9th into April 10th, a relief and a joy to already have your bookends. I had talked about that. Carolina has to get a big and they've got to get a point guard, and they've already got them both. And the portal's still, right? Like, people can still go into the portal, and Carolina's already done that work. I mean, it's great. And that's why I've been preaching patience and not getting frustrated and upset, because literally it feels like the world is caving in, but it just takes those 1 or 2 guys to be like, oh, we're good. Okay, great. And that's where things are at right now. It just took 1 guy committing at each position. And then you're like, okay, now that we have that done, it's just about filling in gaps. What are those gaps? What does Carolina still need to do? Well, to me, more shooting. There's never enough shooting. If that's a big shooting guard, that's great. If that's a stretch 4, that's great. We'll talk about Kanon Catchings here in just a second. He might be able to do that. Maybe it's that backup point guard. I don't think Carolina needs a backup big, because I think they've already got that. And we'll say that in a second. And what I love about getting these guys is, remember, I think there's this big, like, oh, it's got to be the big splashy names, the biggest names, the brightest lights. That's who we need to land out of the portal. I hear that and I get it. And sometimes that is the play, but sometimes it's not. It doesn't have to be the biggest, splashiest names. It has to be the right players. How often last season did we talk about Carolina's biggest issue being roster construction? And so now, as Jim Tanner helps work with the staff to identify who these right players are, that's what they're getting and doing. Is it going to work? We don't know, because that's the portal and incoming freshmen and all that. You don't know till it gets out on the floor. But that's the other thing, is getting these guys so early before it's not even tax day yet. And Carolina's got all these guys. You can get them together as soon as their school years are over, and they can come to Carolina and then start getting to work and figuring out who are we as a team. And I love all of that. The next question then is, as things stand right now, Isaac, who is your starting 5? I'm so glad you asked that. I've already alluded to it, but Kyan Evans, I think, unlocks you the ability to start Seth Trimble at the 2. So right now, as it stands today, my gut reaction is Kyan Evans at the 1, Seth Trimble at the 2. As we sit here, there's no news on Drake Powell. And if you're with me all the time, you know that the way I treat things with the scholarship chart and talking about it is, until a guy has confirmed that he's out, I consider him in. So right now, I treat it as though Drake Powell is going to be on this team as the starting small forward. That's how I'm going to look at it right now. Caleb Wilson as the starting power forward, as the starting 4, and then Henry Vasar as the starting center or 5. And I know some people will say, hey, whoa, hang on there. Not Vin Allen Lubin at the 4? No. Because my thing all along last offseason was, that's great that you got Vin Allen Lubin. He's your backup 5. You still got to get somebody else to be the starter. And he stepped in admirably and did a wonderful job filling in last year. But I really do still think that he is best as Carolina's backup big, and is part of why they didn't reach the heights they wanted to. But now, with Vasar and Lubin at the 5, that is awesome, in my opinion, because of the various things they can do. Opponents have to treat both of them a little bit differently, and that's great. So I like that. And then you've got depth behind them, like Jonathan Powell, who I think could compete for a starting job at the 2 or the 3. Isaiah Dennis, Derek Dixon. Right now, Cade Tyson is still on the roster. Then you got Vin Allen Lubin, you got James Brown, and you got Zayden High. And so there's some depth there, man, that has tantalizing possibilities. Another person, by the way, that could be in that front court rotation or maybe even on the wing is Kanon Catchings. Now, we did a show about him 2 weeks ago now it was, and unpack that. So go find that episode. I'll try to tag it later, go back on YouTube and add a link to it. But he's scheduled and slated for a visit Friday as well. And so has North Carolina got another potential commitment coming up this weekend. We're going to unpack that in just a second. Okay, so Carolina has landed their point guard in Kyan Evans. This is great news. You love it, and I'm excited about it. I want to go back, though, now to Kanon Catchings because he is coming on a visit literally Friday. You might recall part of the reason he hasn't come yet is because it's been in a dead period that started last Thursday. Vesar, remember, visited Wednesday, had to go back to Arizona. Not because he didn't want to come, but because literally at like 30 minutes from now, as it turned to Thursday last week, you had to be gone. No more face-to-face visits. And so Kanon Catchings had been on a visit at Georgia at that point, had to leave. And basically where things were for Carolina was you got to get Kanon Catchings out of Athens, Georgia without committing to the Bulldogs. Successfully, that happened. Thank goodness. And then it was, and now you got to make it through dead period, without him committing to Georgia, kind of like Vesar did commit to North Carolina. That's gone well. Still hasn't committed to Georgia. And as we've already been saying, scheduled a visit to Carolina for this weekend. So everything that needed to go well for the hope of still landing Kanon Catchings has gone well and has happened. So Carolina survived all those like waiting games. And is this going to work? Yes, absolutely it worked. And it did. And Carolina is going to have him on campus. And now, in fact, Pete Nakos, who is on threes, like, kind of like Joe Tipton will often put crystal balls out and stuff like that. Similar to like Travis Branham does for 247, has logged a prediction for Kanon Catchings to be a Tar Heel. Will that hold up? We'll see. Here's a couple things I like about the possibility of Kanon Catchings being a Tar Heel. He's a 6'9" forward that is best suited, in my mind, to play the 4, play a stretch 4 position, kind of Jalen Withersy, with some, I think, important differences that we'll get to. I think he could play down at 3, be a backup to Drake Powell and allow Carolina to go really big, things like that. But what I really like about the possibility of Kanon Catchings coming and being primarily a 4 is that he and Caleb Wilson could really, really compete against each other and go at it and sharpen each other. And then like best man wins and best man gets the start, but they're both going to get time. And I think could both play and be a critical part of Carolina's lineup. And so, man, I love that possibility. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see it as a good thing, as long as they both understand, hey, you got to compete, boys. Let's get after it. So that provides, in my mind, some really great depth at the 4. And then you still got Zayden High, who's not a 5. He's a 4. And so, I mean, you just got nice depth all over the board there. But again, I think also Kanon Catchings could play the 3. He's got a good enough shot that he can set. He was 35% from 3 at BYU last year in his first year, that he could slide down to the 3. Maybe you played one of the Powell boys at the 2. That's not a natural position for Drake Powell, but if you just wanted to go jumbo, you could go like 6'7", 6'9", 6'9", 7 foot with, I mean, that's insane, right? But that's part of what Carolina has the possibility to do if they can land Kanon Catchings, who in addition to being 6'9", has a 6'11" wingspan. It's not, it's not wide, crazy 7'5" kind of range, but it'll do, and that's good enough. One of the things that I think a lot of people haven't because everybody's been quick to dismiss, Kanon Catchings, he was out of the lineup down the stretch of the season, blah, 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 blah. That is true. But what a lot of people haven't talked about is the fact that a lot of the reason for that is because he suffered a knee injury back on March 1st against West Virginia. He played 4 minutes in that game, missed the next 4 games, and then came back for the NCAA tournament. But just, I mean, it's so hard to come back in those moments. So in their 2 games, he played just 4 and 5 minutes respectively, but I wouldn't expect him to play more. And so there's that kind of thing. Here's some yays and nays with Kanon Catchings. On the yay, he's got size, man, 6'9". As I said, I would love a little bit longer wingspan, but it's good enough. I love that he's got shooting at that 4 position. You just 35% is great from the 4 for me. And how important it is in the Hubert Davis system, right? Carolina has thrived when they've had a 4 that is stepping out and hitting shots. Think Jalen Withers hot streak. Think Brady Manick. Those are great examples of Harrison Ingram 2 years ago. I mean, that's when Carolina's been at their best. And so we hope that Caleb Wilson is going to step in and do that. But I have not seen enough from his 3-point shot to trust its consistency at the level that Carolina has had from those 4s when they've been really successful. I think Catchings would bring that. For example, last year he was 43 of 123 from beyond the arc. That would have been 3rd on last year's Carolina team in made threes. Yeah. His percentage, 35, would have been 5th amongst Carolina's rotation guys. But when you start thinking about bringing that in, when you think about what Jonathan Powell will be able to do, when you think about can Drake Powell keep shooting well, obviously Kyan Evans is going to be able to bring that. So that's good. Another yay is his pedigree with Kanon Catchings, right? Like his aunt Tamika was a baller, one of the most famous and successful WNBA players of all time. His parents, other people in his family have been wildly successful basketball players. So all of that pedigree is in him. And then I said a specific thing I want to contrast with Jalen Withers. What is the thing with Jalen Withers that's always no? It's when he tries to dribble and create for himself. That was my big no with Jalen Withers. He's at his best when he catch and shoot threes, putbacks, offensive rebounds, that kind of stuff. What I like that Kanon Catchings can do is that he can create for himself. So even if the threes aren't going down, he's a guy that you can put out on the perimeter as a 4, allow him to drive and maybe kick to somebody or something like that. That is a part of Jalen Withers' game that he didn't have that I love about what Kanon Catchings will bring. Now, let me say some nays about Kanon Catchings. And this is going to make me sound more critical of him than I intend to be, but I just want to paint, my goal is to always paint a fair picture of both the yays and the nays with these guys, both the happy and the crappy of it all. And so that's what I want to do. Just again, from a very honest perspective, because there are somebody like Darion Williams from Texas Tech is shorter. He's 6'6", but he's now in the transfer portal that. If you liked Harrison Ingram, give me Darion Williams at the 4, man. I would love that. I don't think Carolina's I think he's going to demand a big payday and paycheck. But that for me would be boom, the perfect person at 4. Anyway, Kanon Catchings, the nays. His first year at BYU, so he's coming off his freshman year. That's another good thing. If you land Catchings, I guess I should add that to the yays. Just like the 3 guys Carolina has already landed, has 3 years of eligibility, right? Multiple year potential at Carolina. That's great. But his first year at BYU essentially reminds me of Carolina's team last year. There were moments where he was lights out, where he lived up to his high ranking that he had coming into high school. If I remember correctly, before AJ DeBanso was the highest ranked recruit that BYU has ever had in program history. That's Kanon Catchings. That's there and within him. If Carolina lands him, there would be times next year when we would end up saying, wow, Kanon Catchings was the best player on the floor tonight. But similar to Carolina last year as a team, there is enough inconsistency where it's I would almost rather have the higher floor than the ebbs and flows that brings. So that's the thing for me with Kanon Catchings, is that I want to see more consistency. Another potential nay, he had a bad free throw percentage at BYU last year. Go look it up. It's ungood. In fact, why am I going to make you look it up when I've already got it pulled up and I can just tell you? Last year at BYU, his free throw percentage was 58.7%. I personally, and I don't want to use this as an excuse to excuse him from that, but that was on only 46 attempts. It's a small sample size. And the bigger sample size to me is that it at OTE, where he came to BYU from, which is high level basketball, and on the EYBL circuit, had a much higher free throw rate, 75% and above. That's what I'm going to trust. But he's got to get there. Didn't prove it last year at BYU. Perhaps my biggest bro, you got to get better, is rebounding. For his positional size, I need more rebounding out of Kanon Catchings. Now, the thing is, if he comes to Carolina, Hubert Davis will demand it of him or he won't play. Plain and simple, right? We know that to be true. Another thing for Kanon Catchings on the nay is at times, if you go watch game film, not just highlights, go watch actual games. There are times on the defensive end, I don't know if I want to say he checks out, but he's not as locked in as he needs to be. The good thing is Seth Trimble's going to call him out on that. Hopefully Drake Powell will rise up in some of that accountability and call him out as well. And then two other things I'll say on the nay side for Kanon is, number one, sometimes he settles for shots. And he doesn't need to do that because he's got the ball handling. He's got the self-creation to be able to do that for himself. And I'm just such a proponent of valuing every possession that you have. Every time you touch the basketball, we got to get good shots. Houston in the final possession of the national championship game. Ouch, that's too soon. I apologize. Right? But legitimately. And then the last thing is he just needs to bulk up some. Kanon, a little bit slight right now. I'd like to see him put a little more muscle on. It's one of those things, I don't want him to be a meathead where he can't move. That's not his game. But enough muscle where he can still be quick twitch, use his athleticism and get to the rim. But just so that he can withstand the rigors of college basketball. That's all that is. So, you guys, great day to be at Tar Heel. Man, what great news this is for Carolina. Landing Kyan Evans. Again, they've got their point guard. They've got their big. They've got a 2/3 in Jonathan Powell that can add shooting and size positionally. It's great stuff. Carolina is off to a great start and has a shot at landing another guy this weekend in Kanon Catchings when he's on campus. Again, we'll keep our eyes on the Trey Holloman news. Will he still come? I don't know what's going to happen with that. Now, we didn't have time in this show to get over to the comments section, and I apologize for that. I always like to do it, but I can imagine that there's a whole bunch of great questions in there. So here's what I'm going to do. After we get done and after I download this and record it or edit it and uploaded it for the Thursday episode of Locked On Tar Heels, I'm going to go check those out. And I might respond to some either in some shorts that I'll put up on YouTube or just on Friday's show. Coach Rob's going to join me and we can do that. All right. So that's the plan with all of that. You guys, it is 11:40 on the East Coast. I want to thank you for staying up late with me on a school night. But hey, when great news comes, that's what we got to do, right? That's what community is all about, celebrating the Tar Heels. Okay, if you've not subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels on YouTube, for those of you watching, do that right now before you get out of here. That's how you're going to know anytime I go live, when we post new episodes, all of that. Hit that bell notification and say, give me all the notifications for Locked On Tar Heels. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Insider program that I talked about earlier, where I'm dropping all my portal news that I hear, all the rumors I hear, even stuff that's not confirmed. It's like, hey, if it's a rumor, I'm going to drop it in there. I talked about the Zayden High stuff. I've been putting all that in there, so those folks know it. If you want to get in on that, that link is in the show notes. We'd love to have you as a Locked On Tar Heels insider. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, that's another great place to be. That link is also in the show notes. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow. But until then, peace.